Have you ever looked back in certain situations in your life and regretted the decisions you made or the opportunities that you missed? Have you looked back in your life and regretted a lost opportunity? Well, I have. Many years ago, as a young guy, just freshly employed, still very single, the circle of the organization where I was working was had bought some land in Kitangela, Kajiado, and so subdividing the land and were encouraging us to purchase these pieces of land. And for some reason, as a young man, not married, was wondering why should I be doing this. That place seemed to be so far off, and was wondering who will ever settle in that place. And so, in spite of the encouragements and being encouraged to buy land in that place, I didn't. And so the first phase went, the second phase went, the third phase went, and it's only in the fourth phase that, again, after a lot of persuasion, I was able to get myself one plot. Fast forward many years later, married man with children, and just seeing how I need to develop myself, and with the land thing having caught up with us, I look back and wonder, what if I had bought 3, 4, 5 of those pieces of plots? I would be talking very differently today, having seen the value of land and appreciated the value of land as I have come to today. And so those are some of the things that I do regret. But I do believe that for many of us, there are many things that you may look back into your life and do regret. Probably a relationship that did not work well, or that you broke off, and looking back, maybe you might be wondering what could have been of that relationship. There could have been maybe job opportunities that you let go then, that looking back you may be wondering, what if I had seized that moment, seized my opportunity? And there are so many things that we may be able to look back and wonder, and sometimes regret having not taken the opportunities that were availed to us. I think there's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to do something was 10 years ago. It always seems that way. The best time to have done something was several years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But then it goes ahead and says that, and the next best time to do something is now. And so no matter what regrets we may have, no matter what missed opportunities we may feel that we have lost, there's always still another opportunity. And as much as we are alive today, we can seize the moment and do the things that we may need to do. And so this morning I want to talk about, and my prayer today is that we will not come to a place where we look back and regret so many things in our lives, especially those very, very important decisions. And so last week, even as I was preaching, and I shared with us about the year that was, and I talked about King Uzziah, and saying that in that year, the year that for the prophet Isaiah, in that year, the year that King Uzziah died, he says that he saw the Lord. In that year, something significant happened to him. And I talked about several significant years in our lives, and we can maybe look back again to some years where we missed or lost certain opportunities in our lives. And so this morning, I want to look at another king, and continuing with in our journey of rediscovering who this God is. And today again, it's like part 2 of the year that was, and I want to look at another year and at another king who lived during the time of prophet Isaiah. Last week our focus was on the prophet himself and what happened in the year that King Uzziah, the king of Judah, died. But today I want us to look at the life and the story of a king who reigned during the time of Isaiah the prophet. And this king is somebody who lost an opportunity to showcase God's greatness and his goodness in his lifetime. And we're going to be looking at one of the best kings who ever served in the nation of Judah. Remember, as I said earlier, Israel, because of the rebellious nature, were divided into two kingdoms: the northern kingdom, the Israel, and the southern kingdom, Judah. Now, the prophet Isaiah was a prophet to the southern kingdom of Judah, and this king reigned in Judah, whose capital was Jerusalem. And he was among the few kings who did good. There were kings who were bad. Think about people like Ahab, even as we learned earlier, such a wicked king who did evil in the sight of God. Kings that did things that led to apostasy and a rebellion of the people against their God. But there were also kings who brought about reforms, who did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. And one of those kings is a king I want us to focus on this morning, and that's King Hezekiah. And this king was the son of another king, Ahaz, of Judah, and he was 25 years when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem, which, as I said, was the capital of Judah, for 29 years. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He even broke into pieces. Imagine this, the bronze snake that Moses had made. Remember in the book of, I think, Numbers, when the people were being bitten by snakes in the wilderness, Moses put up a bronze serpent and raised it up, and whoever was bitten by that serpent, when they looked at that cross, at the snake, the bronze snake, they will be healed, as a sign of what was to come in future. But like is the nature of human beings, these people had begun even to worship that bronze snake that Moses had raised up in the wilderness. And so King Hezekiah broke into pieces the bronze snake, this bronze snake that these people had begun to worship and burn incense to. They called it Nehushtan. It was one of the idols that they worshipped. His story, so Hezekiah's story is found in 2 Kings chapters 18 to 20, 2 Chronicles 30 to 32, and Isaiah 37 to 39. All these portions of scriptures are very, very identical as they give the life journey of this one King Hezekiah. But like I said earlier, he was one of the very few good kings who reigned over Judah. But like Uzziah before him, he also began well, but didn't quite finish well. They say that the greatness of a man is not determined by how well he starts, but by how well he finishes. And it seems that some of these good kings in Israel and Judah this did not apply in their lives, because they began well, but their finish or their end was not as good. And so I want us to jump to the very end of Hezekiah's life, and I'll be reading from the book of Isaiah chapter 39. Remember, his story is covered from chapter 37, 38, and 39 of the book of Isaiah. And so I want us to go right in to the very end of his life. And this is in Isaiah 39, and you can read the whole chapter. It's going to serve as our text today. But I want to read it. I won't read the whole of that chapter for the sake of time. But please do read the whole of that chapter. That's our text for this morning, and I'm going to be able to draw certain truths from this chapter. The chapter comes after chapter 37 and 38, where great things have happened. First is a threat from Sennacherib, king of Assyria. Remember, the Assyrians were one of the nations that God used to punish Israel and Judah because of their disobedience. And so this is some of the rulers, or some of the most powerful kings that were empires that did exist then. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, threatened to wipe out Jerusalem. And so, because of that threat, and he sends envoys with letters, telling him what is this confidence that you have in God, and who is this that you're depending on? Why are you deceiving the people of Israel? I'll come, and then he even shows them how he has destroyed the other kings. Contemporaries of King Hezekiah. And so when Hezekiah receives this letter, he takes it up to the Lord in prayer. What a beautiful prayer. And we did pray this during our Friday prayer meeting in Isaiah 37 verses 14 to 20. It's Hezekiah's prayers. He brings this and presents it to the Lord, whom he depends on, and cries out to him. And God miraculously delivers Judah from this threat, throwing confusion into the Assyrian king, leading to the death of 185,000 men, and thus the downfall of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria. In fact, this brings down the empire of Assyria, and we never hear again of the Assyrian empire, of the Assyrians reigning and ruling over the nation of Israel. And after that, in Isaiah chapter 38, Hezekiah gets infected by a disease as dreadful. I almost said COVID-19, but it's a disease as dreadful as COVID-19. We don't know what kind of sickness this was, but he gets terribly ill that he is at the point of death. And if it was today, he might have been probably been in the ICU or flown, being a king, being a ruler of his nation, maybe flown into some country with some great medical facilities. So Hezekiah is at the point of death, and so the prophet Isaiah goes to him the way a pastor will visit one of his congregants in the hospital to pray for him, and he comes and tells him. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure if this is the word of the Lord, but he tells him to put his house in order, for he is going to die. Can you imagine hearing that, or being told that by your pastor? Instead of laying hands and praying a prayer of faith that you may be healed, he comes and tells you that put your house in order, for you are going to die. What will you do if you got such a message? You have this terminal disease or get this terrible virus, and the doctor tells you there is nothing else they can do. Please go home. Or even your pastor who comes to pray for you tells you, no, put your house in order. You are going to die. And so Hezekiah turned his face to the wall. Maybe you know how the beds are. So maybe his bed was there's the side that faces the door, but this side facing the wall. He faces the wall and prayed to the Lord. And he says, and listen to his prayer. He says, remember, O Lord, how I have walked and I've walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and I have done what is good in your eyes. He reminds God of his goodness, of his testimony, how he has walked faithfully before him and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in the sight of God. And God, and just as he prays to the Lord, and before maybe Isaiah, I'm imagining, if it was these days, before the pastor gets out of the car, goes to the parking lot, and as he's in the parking lot, the man of God gets a message, and God tells him, go back to Isaiah. Then the word of the Lord, it says, came to Isaiah, go and tell Hezekiah, this is what the Lord, the God of your father David says, I have heard your cry, your prayer, and seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend the city. Isaiah 38 verses 2 to 6. What a miracle again. Hezekiah is instantly healed. Hezekiah doesn't die, but he's added another 15 years in his life. Imagine living your life knowing that you have another 15 years. So no matter what threats come your way, no matter what pandemic hits, no matter what accidents or dangerous places you are, or if the plane is going to crash, you are sure you're not going to die because God promised him another 15 years. Now on top of that, the Lord gives Hezekiah a sign through the same prophet Isaiah. And the third miracle, this great sign that God gives to Hezekiah is that I will make the shadow cast by the sun go back the 10 steps it has gone down the stairway of Ahaz. Now in those days, the way they will tell time, they didn't have these watches, these serious watches that we use to tell time. But what they will look at, what will determine time was how the sun moved and how the shadow moved. And so in this staircase of the king of Ahaz, there was a sundial, and how, depending on how the shadow moved, they will be able to tell what time it was. And if you and I know, even in the African setup, that's how we will tell what time it was. We looked at the sun, and the sun will go in one direction, and so as the sun is going to set, we knew it was going to be, is coming towards the end of the day. And so that's how they will tell time in those days. And so the sign that God gives to Hezekiah through the prophet Isaiah is that the shadow will go back. Now that is something huge. Never before has this happened. Now the Israelites had had through their great-grandfathers of a time when Joshua prayed and the sun came to a standstill. They had heard of a time that Joshua prayed when he was fighting the Amorites in Joshua 10 and verse 13. And he prayed and the sun came to a standstill. But nothing like this had ever happened. When the sun will come down, the shadow will go back. Now, it's one thing for the sun to quickly ascend down. And sometimes we feel that way. You see, hey, it has really gone quickly. Time has flown. But for the time to go back has never happened. That's why we have all these regrets. We cannot go back and undo some of the things that we didn't do. But in this, God gives Hezekiah a sign by saying that I will make the shadow cast by the sun go back the 10 steps it has gone down on the stairway of Ahaz. Now this was a great sign. this was not only for Hezekiah, but also for the entire nation. And not just the Israelites, but also the heathen nations around them. Some of them worshipped the sun, one of the biggest planets. They did worship the sun. So you can imagine, this is something that was visible for everybody else. The time rolled backward. That's how powerful this God whom we serve is. He's able to not only stop the sun, but also make the shadow go back. And so the greatest of all miracles, the sun has gone back 10 steps in the staircase of Ahaz. This was a great miracle, as I said, and it must have caught the attention, not just of Hezekiah or Judah, but of the whole of Babylon. After all, the Chaldeans were the ones who had invented this sundial, so they understood, the Chaldeans astronomers understood what happened, and for them, they must have been amazed and marveled at this great miracle. And so in chapter 39, which is our text today, the king of Babylon, who at that time was somebody by the name Merodach Baladon. Baladon means Baal is the Lord. He sends his envoys to Hezekiah. Now we don't know exactly which year this thing happened. There are those who believe that it could have been maybe in 714 BC that this happened, or some other school of thought believe that it was in 705 BC. No, but whatever the case, what is important is not the exact date of or when this happened, but that something significant happened in this year, the year that was, as we've been talking about. And this significant thing happened when two things happened. One was the miraculous healing of Hezekiah. Now, being the king of Judah, being such a great king, and also having had such a sickness, this must have been breaking news that the king that was lying in ICU or had been taken abroad for that was very sick has recovered. So his recovery, his sickness and recovery was a great sign. But more than that, the sun going back was such a great sign. And so the king of Babylon sends his envoys to come to inquire what has happened. And so they come to Hezekiah, and he sends letters with these envoys and a gift to Hezekiah the king. And because of what they have heard and seen happen supernaturally. And so they come, and as they come to Hezekiah, the Bible says that Hezekiah then showed them the things that were in his temple. He receives them gladly and then shows them the treasures in his temple. He brags, I can imagine him showing them, going from room to room, just showing them his magnificent possessions. The silver, the golden things, the silver things in the temple that were there, or in his palace, that were there. He showed them everything in his possession when they came. He bragged about everything else. Just like us, how often do we showcase our accomplishments? How often do we showcase our accolades? We brag and want to float around our credentials and our certificates and even our relationships, the kind of things that we put forth in social media, showing where we have spent our holidays, showing nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it's really a matter of the heart. What is the motivation for us to put those things? How come when we go to Shags, we don't put those things on social media, but we want to brag about the wonderful things, our accomplishments, and nothing wrong with that. It's good to rejoice with those who rejoice, but it's really, friends, it's a matter of the heart. Even as Christians, how often will we show off people, our churches? How often will we show them how big our sanctuary is? Show them just how many instruments we have, how big the congregation is, how many instruments our worship team has, how the decor is. We want to showcase our beautiful buildings. Now at Abundant Life Community Church, that doesn't apply, but one day God may bless us. So will that be what we show off to people, to others, or will we show off the God who is in our midst? What do we brag about? Now it's very, very easy as I said earlier, for us outwardly to say, when people tell us wonderful things about us, when they praise us for our accomplishments and our wisdom and our wealth, it's very, very easy for us to say glory to Jesus. Outwardly looking humbly and saying, glory to Jesus. We say it very spiritually, but deep down inside our hearts, is our heart rejoicing? Are we saying, yes, I'm bad news. I'm this great guy. So often it's very easy for us to be saying it, to say in our hearts, how great thou art. Not him, but how great I am because of the things that I have done. Listen to what how 2 Chronicles 32 and verse 31 puts it. But when the envoys were sent by the rulers of Babylon to ask Hezekiah about the miraculous sign that had occurred in the land, God left him to test him and know everything that was in his heart. Friends, the Bible says that in Jeremiah 17 and verse 9, our hearts are deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Only God, I the Lord, searches the hearts. And sometimes it's very, very easy for us to say in a pious way, to say in a humble way that glory to Jesus, it's the Lord, it's Jesus. But deep down we are bragging, we are proud, we are saying, oh, look how great we are, look how I did that. We are proud of our own accomplishments. In fact, in the same 2 Chronicles 32 and verse 25, it says, but Hezekiah's heart was proud, and he did not respond to the kindness shown him. Therefore the Lord's wrath was on him and on Judah and Jerusalem. May the Lord search our hearts this morning to really know what is in our heart. Remember, it says that the Lord allowed this to test Hezekiah, to test him and to know everything that was in his heart, and he was found wanting. May we not be found wanting where our hearts are concerned. Remember, the Lord does not look at our outward appearance, but he looks into our hearts. And no matter how humble we may look or want to look when people praise us and say good things about us, what is happening in our hearts? What is going on inside of us? Are we proud? It's Job who said, Lord, if I've kissed my heart in secret. And how many times do we kiss our hands in secret, bragging about what we have? So Isaiah the prophet comes to inquire about where these strange men have come from, what they say and what they saw. And Hezekiah tells him, he doesn't hide anything from him. He tells him they came from Babylon and they saw everything in my palace. They saw all his possessions, his treasures. Instead of showing them the greatest of all treasures, which is God himself, he showed them all his earthly possessions. He showed them, he testified of his own greatness. Instead of testifying about God's greatness and goodness, he showed them his earthly possessions, as I said earlier. He missed a wonderful opportunity to show off, to showcase this God who had healed him, this God who had stopped the sun, or made the sun go back 10 steps. He had failed to testify about him to these unbelievers who had traveled from far and wide to come and inquire about this great miracle. Friends, what happened in that year? What happened in that year was so great miracles. Yet Hezekiah missed this opportunity to testify about God. Friend, what has happened this year has brought us to the reality that everything that can be shaken will be shaken, and only that which cannot be shaken will remain. Those things we brag about, those things that we want to show off, they can be lost in a second. People have lost jobs. Things have just vanished. Who could have imagined that Hotel Intercontinental would be empty? People will be sent home. They are now talking about it being sold. Who could have imagined that such big airlines like Emirates will stop operation? Who would have imagined that great corporations will come to a standstill like they have done this year? It's like Daddy Owen sang, Yote ni vanity. All these things are vanity. And those very things that Hezekiah bragged about, they were all taken away. God, in fact, through the prophet Isaiah prophesies that a day is coming when they'll be taken into captivity in Babylon, and all those things will be lost. Friends, many scientists are wondering about how come Kenya and Africa in general hasn't recorded as many deaths as people expected. Being a third world country, people had expected that this, when this pandemic hits poor Africa, oh, people will die in the millions. But you know what? They're amazed at the very few deaths that have come as a result of this pandemic. And they have come up with different theories. Could it be the weather, the sunshine? But hey, it's somewhere in America now, it's somewhere in India, but people are still dying. Is it the young population? India also has a young population. What is it? You know, is it that we are strong? Why? What is the reason behind all this? Why is it that we have not gone the way that the Western countries went? May I submit to us this morning that I believe that the Lord has spared us. And may we remember to give God all the glory. May not say it's because of how special we are or anything we did, but it is by the mercies of God. May this be an opportunity for we in Africa to tell others about this God that we serve. We are very spiritual people. We are people who love God. May we lift them up in this season. What if Hezekiah showed these people God? What if he told them about him who had healed him and him who had given him this sign? What if he bragged about this God who had done such great and mighty things in his life? But Hezekiah failed in his year of destiny. And all those wonderful things he showed these envoys, as I said earlier, were carried away into captivity many, many years later. Nothing was left behind. Pride indeed comes before a mighty fall. Although he repented and the Lord did forgive him, he missed an awesome opportunity to glorify the Lord. Friends, just as like we have seen during this COVID season, all these things that have happened to us, and even in our personal lives, the Lord has been good. God has done great things. We have been healthy. We have not been carried away by the disease. Good things, some of us have retained our jobs. Wonderful things have happened in our lives. May we testify. May we not miss that opportunity when people come to us and ask us about the secret of our success. When people come and ask us about the things that are happening in our lives, good things that are happening in our lives, may we not fail like Hezekiah did, but may we use and seize the moment and take the opportunity to share with people about the Lord Jesus Christ. May this be our year of destiny, and may we not fail like Hezekiah to show off how our God and tell them of his goodness and upon our lives. May we boast, like Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 9:24, let them that boast in this, that they know and understand the Lord. Paul put it so nicely. If you want to boast, if you want to brag in the Lord. Friends, may we brag in the Lord. May we be like Andrew, who told his brother Peter, come and see, we found the Messiah. May we show people the Messiah. May we be like the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4 and verse 29, who told the whole village, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ? See him change lives. Him who has healed and saved us. May we always point others to Jesus. May we seize every opportunity to lift